All right, gang. So it is Wednesday, June 6th, 2018 at 6 p.m. We're here for the Radnor Township Historic and Architecture Review Board. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so now we have new business, Harb 2018-04 200 Poplar Avenue. Yes, ready when you are.
Okay. Good evening. Good to see you all again. My name's Cam Lacey, the architect for the Fluck residence, which is 200. If you've looked at everything that I've handed out, we're talking about basically a one-story addition off the rear of the building. And I'll show you the site plan. This is like a 1905, one of the original developed houses in the North Wayne neighborhood, and it's probably one of 7 on the block that's the same style. There were 2 different styles. One has this gambrel roof that's parallel to the street, and one has a gabled roof. And the gambrel is this style, and actually gives you a bigger second floor, which is a bonus. But it gives you more roof line to maintain. So, you know, whichever one you like, that's it. Do you have a handheld thing? Yeah. Okay, maybe you can zoom into this area. That'd be great. That's pretty good. As you can see, this is the original shape of the house. Here's Woodland Avenue. Here's Poplar. North is this way. This section and this section of the house currently are shed roof kind of additions and original. Put this side by side. Here's the front of the house and here's the rear. So we're in the same orientation as this, and you can see this is a back kind of a porch utility space, and then this is a bump out that it has a piece of the kitchen in it, and then this wall is kind of the main wall of the rear of the house. So what we're trying to do is kind of take that idea and expand it a bit backward. And a lot of these houses, they have kind of a flip plan, and this one happens to be flipped where the services are on the right side of the house as you face the back, and they sort of wanted them, as it turned out, on the left side. So we're kind of taking the same idea, but just flipping it and then elongating it a little bit. And this house has, you know, original stone base, water table base, and then it's got a 3-inch exposure wood, which is unusual. Most of these houses, the wood's gone or it's covered up, and it's wrecked under, you know, all of those different layers. This first floor is all original stuff, which is in pretty good shape. So we want to mimic that in whatever we're doing, and we're looking at either using real wood or hardy plank. And if we use real wood, it'll be spruce or cedar, which we'll paint, but it'll be the same exposure, same corner boards, all that kind of stuff. So we've got, and then there's this deck piece that's off the back too, which is just a little piece. So that's kind of the, you can see this is the original footprint, a little bit easier. And then I think you saw the photographic keys, so that follows this. So we have the existing, and here's again the rear of the building. Interestingly, next door, this is also that same style, but it's in the gabled roof line. And this was an addition that was done I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, which is a little bit different approach than what we're trying to do. So, we're not trying to go that massive at all. The other thing we're going to consider, and it's not on the elevations right now, but this little keyhole that's off of this porch, if I can get that apart and reuse it, I'd like to use it on the other side in the same location as the new porch. Right now, we just have a column and a baluster. But I think that's something that, if it's original and we can pull it apart, we want to reuse that. The other thing we're trying to do is this mansard shape needs to be maintained on both elevations on each end, and that remains the same. So this side will remain in one plane. The other side is going to kick in a little bit to define the main body of the house and maintain that. And then the roof line stays the same. And then all the other photographs are, we're going to detail all the windows like that. You have a head that's a little bit off, comes over, overhangs, then a crown on the top, a show sill that comes out a little bit. So that'll be sort of the detail of the windows we're going to use. Here's the 3-inch siding, and then you've got some rafter tails that are exposed. So we're going to do all those things. And then the second floor, we're not touching any of the second floor. This is original. This is actually vinyl over top of the original. We're going to leave that alone, but we're not going to ever use vinyl or anything like that. So if we take it off, these guys are interested in, kind of authenticity. So if we take it off, we'd like to restore it as well in that guard. And you've got some context. You've got across the street. This was a tear down many years ago, which changed the zoning in Radnor in this area, because that was a single Victorian-style house that was demolished and 2 houses were put on there. And it's a nice house, but it doesn't have any characteristics of the neighborhood. So, and then across the street from that is a lowrider, which was done probably in the 50s. So that's not really contextual for this house. Down the corner, these are opposite each other on Woodland Avenue. They're similar houses, but you can see they have a lot of good details to them. And then these are similar. This is the gabled version, and that's the gambrel version. So you can see how far out you get. This window is a lot further out than that one, so you get a lot more space on the second floor. So that's kind of the context. Then we go to, I want to go to this is the Woodland Avenue. Let me get in on that one. If I stay real still, it'll zoom. There we go. This is the Woodland Avenue elevation, which is the most visible elevation as you're running around. It's unusual also, this is a corner property, so you do see the back as opposed to most of the properties. So this is this little kind of back porch area that we're thinking about using the keyhole detail on, and I think that would be really appropriate to try to restore that. It shows up occasionally in these buildings and actually in different styles, and they actually used to use it as a main exit. And the exits went off the side of the house through the keyhole, and then that back shed was a toilet and then other stuff. But that's all it was. It was very simple. And then everybody kind of converted those things around, left the keyholes or took them away, and made the steps come straight back. So we're still going to have the steps going straight back, but I think the keyhole, particularly on a corner property, would give that extra interest, and it would, repurposing something that was there. Here's the stone base that exists. Here's the 4-inch or the 3-inch clapboard. This is where this kicks in a little bit on the corner, so I want to make sure that corner board is exposed as well as that, so this reads as the main original. But then we'll take the siding and go to 3-inch siding again and match the base all the way around. And then it's just a simple shed that comes in underneath the...
One quick question.
Yes.
With the addition, is that original to the house?
The additions that are there now?
That's currently
Yeah,
exists?
that's currently, well, this other, I'm not sure if it's clear. The second one has some demolition. That line there is the kitchen piece. See if I can kind of put this side by side. That line right there is this piece, which is the first little bump out. And then that line there is the extent of this. So we're going to actually take that all apart and overlay it and bring it out a little further. Does that make sense?
But is that addition original to the house, or was that added on at a later time?
The
Do you know?
original, the addition that was all original.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So that's, yeah, I'm not sure about the kitchen piece. That might have been a later bump out. But this is definitely original, but it may have been reconfigured on the outside a little bit. But that's basically a toilet right there. That's all that was in there. And in the foundation's 20 inches thick. And the foundation goes out underneath this little, addition. And so there's a space that big in the middle of it that the pipe comes down. So and then you think about, this is a stone foundation that goes down 8, 9 feet. A lot of work to have exposed plumbing. I think originally they probably just, tossed it out the back door, but this is what they did. So we're going to take a little bit of that apart because it's kind of falling apart and it doesn't do anything for us, but we're going to leave the corner on this corner back here because it strengthens everything. So,
Is there any chance if you can't preserve the keyhole, is there any chance you'd be able to replicate it on the other side?
Yeah. The previous project that we did on the other side of the street, I don't know if you guys were here or not for that one, but there was a keyhole on the north side, and we replicated it on the other side. So we'll do it one way or another. It's just I'd prefer to use the original if we can. But that was just, I wanted to give you two versions of this. And this is the least, I'd rather do the keyhole, but if it's okay to do this, for some reason we can't do the keyhole, maybe the millwork to do the curve is too expensive. I don't know. I'd rather do the keyhole. Let's put it that way. Okay, so that's the woodland addition, and this is the north elevation, which shows the other side of this. So you can kind of see, that's the addition that goes over top of the furthest piece here. This is the piece that moves out further. So we're doing that, making that just a little bigger. And then the family room piece is a little bit further over, beyond, and a little further back. And then the mudroom porch steps back again. So you've got this in and out, which we have now, which we're going to try to maintain. And then nothing else on the house is going to be touched other than the front porch flooring and the ceiling. The flooring right now is the original pine, 1,000 layers of paint pine, kind of rotten, whatever. I don't think we can restore that, but if we remove it, we're gonna fix all the structural things that have happened, and then we're gonna do mahogany. And we do that on the back porch as well to match. And I find that's a really good, kind of a durable and, kind of brings the level of finish up a little bit. The ceiling we'll do the same. It's a beaded board ceiling. We have to take it down for some water damage, and also there's no insulation in any of this building, so the bedrooms sit over top of the porch. So we're going to fix that. This is also kind of a different house in that these columns, a lot of these columns are wood, and they're big 24-inch rounds, or they're big 8x8, kind of on the corner. There's 3, and then there's 2, and there's, connector rods in between them. This one happens to be stone round. If you look up in the kind of the write-up of this house, it says that the base of the columns comes up to railing height, and then it has wood columns above and a banister, which this does not have now. So this was redone at some point, between 1905 and now, to do this, but it's pretty significant to do round columns out of stone. So somebody worked pretty hard to do that. You can still see the remnants of the square down below it. It sticks up above the deck about 2 inches or so, and then the round comes up off of that.
One question on this, the north elevation. On the plan that I have, you note that you're taking out an existing window, but
Yeah,
that's not shown there.
it is on the demolition.
Okay.
If you look at, so I give you two.
Okay,
I wanted one-
that's the one that I
Yeah,
have.
I
Okay.
wanted one that was clean so you can see what we're going to end up with, and then there's one that shows that being removed. Here's the keyhole that we're going to reuse. So there are actually two windows here now, and it's all one face. There's no jogging it at all. So we'll take the keyhole and use it on the other side, and we take these two out and then replace it. We kind of put the two together to make that. And that's, this house has single 6/1s, or it's got these bays. And then the original on the backside, a lot of times they had triples. So multiple windows is something that's consistent with what we're doing. And then the rear elevation, I wanted to go through the other ones first because they kind of show the depth of how we're doing things. Then the rear is a little bit more flat to look at, but we're trying to get a lot of light into this main addition. And then you've got the porch here with a door and a side light, and then two windows in the kitchen area. And then there's a little kind of a shed roof here that covers a stair that goes down to the basement. Right now it's a Bilco door. You can see it here.
You
That's
won't
the-
have to move the trampoline, will you?
We might. I think we have to move it a little further back. So, we're removing all these stairs and this deck here along with it, and then the new deck would be in there, and then there's a flagstone terrace here that everything stays, and we just kind of mate back into that. So that's, we're going to use a stone foundation. It's probably going to be a 2-inch veneer, not a real 6-inch, but it'll be stone that matches. It depends on cost. We're going to look at it both ways. And like I say, if the flat stock of wood, I usually like to use AZAC because it's just the same. You can get all the dimensional stuff in that, and it doesn't ever rot or do anything like that. But you're not going to find necessarily a 3-inch exposure. I probably can find it in a wood that I'm going to be happy with, but I have to look at that and see what the cost versus all the wood now is new growth, wide grain, whatever. It doesn't last as long. And what we don't want to do is, if he has to start replacing things, what does he do? We want to kind of start that. Right now, it looks like we can just do some prep and paint the outside now, and it's going to be fine. It's remarkable. I mean, literally, this is the first house, one of the first houses I've come to where it hasn't been covered up and clad and everything in the world, and everything underneath is bad. So it's really nice to have some original equipment that's still there. So that's pretty much it. I think the scale of the addition work that we're doing to the main house stays, kind of in the 1/3, 2/3, which is kind of what I like to try to do. It's not written down anywhere, but that's kind of the proportioning. And to keep it in that one-story shed roof kind of a detail that mimics everything that's there now, but just in a little larger scale. So that's pretty much the project, and it perked, so we're good in the ground. We can do things for that, so that's good. And we just need your blessing.
All right, so questions from the board?
I do have a question. If you say you want to bring more light in, I'm unsure why you're removing a window. I'm looking at the north elevation demolition page. I can understand why you're removing the window on the addition part because you're going to be replacing that window with something else. But you're removing a window on this view to the left of the bay, and I'm wondering why, if your goal is to continue to bring light into the home, you would want to replace the window with a blank wall.
Well, it's a matter of repositioning windows. It's the same amount of window, it's just a little different orientation. To make things work on the internal parts, that window would jeopardize a lot of things. So to get the same amount of light, we decided to go with two, but put them together so that we can get more useful space. That happens to be the kitchen back there, so it's, that was the reasoning behind it.
Just to go a little bit further with that, 'cause that's a concern that I had too, that there would be a window that will be taken out. To your knowledge, is that window original to
Yeah.
the original part of the house?
I believe so, yeah.
Would
That's not really-
the owners entertain preserving that window?
I think it becomes how everything lays out if we keep it. I don't recall exactly what that does, how that impacts everything. If we were to do that, we'd probably leave both of the originals in. But I don't think that works really well on the interior. Because, these windows were laid out based on an interior that was finite to 1905. And now we're expanding that footprint and taking some of the old space and adding the new space. And, to kind of make that work, we have to shift things around a little bit. And that's kind of the only shift that we're doing on this side. I don't know whether if it works, we can make it work, but if it doesn't, it doesn't, right?
Yeah, if you can make it work, I think, just top of my head, it would be really difficult where that window is positioned with the
Yeah.
interior wall.
You want to
I
speak?
don't know if I want to or
Yeah,
not.
you got to.
This
This is the
make
owner.
everything-
This is
to
the
make everything
owner.
official. Hi, I'm Ted. Just top of my head, real quick, just knowing the way the home is currently working, the window that you're talking about, from this elevation, if you can imagine, directly to the right of that window is an interior wall. And we're looking at putting the kitchen space in there. So what that would do, it would be very difficult to have that window right next to the corner where you're going to have a counter and then coming in and out right there, which I think is part of the intention of moving it. It is a north-facing window. It doesn't shed a ton of light into that room, but I can understand that that is how the home was originally designed. I think by bumping that to the left a little bit does give us a lot more flexibility for having a kitchen space inside, which was a part of the reason this project was originated. But to that end, we would still get plenty of light in there. And I know that moving that around a little bit is probably consistent with what's been done also with similar looks in the neighborhood also. If you were to go up and down there's 4 homes in a row that are directly the same. I'm pretty sure that's been moved more than once there.
Just a comment on that. What we focus on is the outside appearance that
Sure.
is, as visible as possible as we can from the street. It seems to me that this, again, would be an original window on the house in the historic district that would be removed, basically altering the outside characteristics. I understand why you would want to take that window out for what you want to do for a kitchen, like a wall, et cetera. I understand that. What does the rest of the board think about that? Any opinions?
So if I can make one clarifying comment real quick, that this wall is not visible to the street. So the street is opposite and to the front of the home on the corner there. So this is actually the furthest away from the view of the public, for what it's worth.
If I may, and that is that the house is across from, if I'm understanding, probably the most eclectically architectural view in America, houses that should not ever have been allowed to be built where they are. So it has to seem very strange that you'd have to ask permission in view of the particular corners that I'm talking about. It's only sad that there was no historical and architectural review board, especially for the ranch. But as much, I think what we are feeling is that as much as you're facing the back, we'd like to see as much preserved of the original as possible, certainly as much of the tenor of the era, but it was a different period of time. We are very concerned about what faces the street. I can appreciate what you're going through because we have a house that needs light, needs all the light it can get. But given its situation and the fact that you are not surrounded by pristine houses of the same architecture. In fact, Poplar itself probably has the most varied architecture by virtue of having a longest period of time. There are houses on the 1913 map, for example, Franklin maps, that are not on the 1895 maps. So, in other words, it changed the neighborhood itself. That particular street of all in the so-called historic district, Northern, is probably the most diverse and might be able to handle a little bit more than some of the other streets.
So you're ultimately your feeling about the window is it's okay.
I'm okay.
I'll just follow up. It's, of all the elevations on this house, this is the only one that no one can see. Everybody else can see the back, the side, and the front. So we really wanted to maintain what we could about the scale and the idea of multiple windows on the rear versus, doing a whole bunch of singles or whatever. And this one, while I agree with your thoughts about that, and I'm the first one to try to save everything in the world that I can as original equipment, I felt that in lieu of the three other sides that we were trying to maintain, and that literally the other house that's next door is 20 feet away, maybe it's a 12-foot side yard setback. It's, it is impossible to see it. So it's one of those things where that was the only give. And then, we're trying to take this piece, this other thing you can't really see, this keyhole, and reuse it. So there was kind of some weighting of things that we were trying to do. And that window didn't seem to be the thing that would hold us up because, we're doing a lot of other things. So that was how we sort of approached it. But I understand what you're saying.
My thoughts, whenever we're in a situation like this, I try to think about if the architect were to be given this, the brief of a project that included the additional space that we're adding on, does this feel like this is what the architect would come up with? And my personal feeling about it is, yeah, it's pretty close. Sure, there are some details in it that it perhaps wouldn't have been done at the time. Yes, it has multiple windows before, but the row of 4x4s in the back of the house, I can live with. But that's a little out of place from from the rest of the house and the style. The 4x4s are not, but just simply the row of 4x4s adjacent to each other. It was the portion that has me in check. It's not significant enough in my mind to uphold moving forward. And I think you did the right thing by going with Cam. Having that kind of knowledge base and experience is crucial, and and to be able to have the knowledge that allows you to work within the historic districts is crucial. So my feeling overall, aside from the line of 4x4s, I'm good with it. Any other comments from the board? Any public comments? All right, then, is there a motion? Well, somebody needs to, aside from the person chair.
All right, I will move that the HARB recommend to the commissioners a certificate of appropriateness with the caveat that the keyhole be preserved.
By caveat, you mean a requirement or recommendation?
A recommendation that the commissioners require that the keyhole be preserved.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor? Okay. Not opposed. Okay, so please keep the keyhole. It's a great aspect to it.
I just, I wanted to talk about both of them, but that's my intention is to keep
Yeah.
it, so. Well, thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
Glad-
Good seeing
glad
you.
You guys are still here.
Yeah.
doing your thing.
Yep. All right.
All right. That was a little longer than I thought it was. Sorry.
That's all right. So
I'll sign off.
next, we have old business. Oh, thank you. We have old business. Is there old business before we actually get to the HARB ordinance? No? Okay, well then we'll move on to the report on the new HARB ordinance.
Well, we had an election, and we've got some new commissioners, so it's time to interview them, and that's what I plan to do before the next meeting.
Okay. Bob, you had, I think, prepared some remarks.
Yes, Sarah and I, not too long ago, met with Kevin about the issue of community notification and various methods that are out there. It was a very insightful meeting, and I want to thank Sarah again for taking the time to put that together, and also for Kevin to meet with us. It was very insightful. A couple of things I just wanted to share with you on community notification where, in my opinion, I think that we should go after meeting with Kevin and giving this some more further thought and other strategies that we looked at before in the past and shared on the board. So here are just some of my opinions. And for me, in my opinion, I think we should go with a mailing. And I'll go and just detail that very briefly. I observed several posted zoning board signs in Haverford Township, Lower Merion Township, and the Rittenhouse Square area of Philadelphia over the last several months, just by bopping into them. Many of these signs, in my observation and opinion, are placed too low to the ground and are hard to read, especially for over 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80 pluses. And one must stoop, too, to read many of these signs. These signs are also affected by weather conditions, degradation from the sun, solar irradiance. One former time in my work life, I worked for a weather forecasting company, and at another time, I worked for a manufacturer of scientific-grade light instrumentation. So I'm familiar with sun damage and how that can happen. And one of the tests that we did, like for example on car paint for an auto manufacturer, is how long will this paint last under these weather conditions, say for example in deserted areas of Arizona. So we could replicate that study in a short period of time where that little piece would be studied, say for example, of a 10-year period of being exposed to the sun. So I have some familiarity with this. And also the ones that I've noticed being affected by weather conditions, the rain. Some had protective covers, some did not. With the mailing, no matter what a person's age or physical limitations, the person can readily adjust the mailing in the shelter of their home to a physical or visual comfort level free from environmental degradation. And that works best for him or her. This cannot be done with a posted ground sign in particular, in my opinion. On the mailing, in my opinion, it is very low cost to the taxpayer. There are zero startup costs. The infrastructure in equipment, information, personnel, and materials are already here in the Radnor Township building. The marginal costs for additional mailings, if need be, are also very low. In summary, in my opinion, I anticipate that these positive attributes of a mailing will have a very positive impact in keeping our citizens informed of Radnor Harb cases at a very low cost to the taxpayer. More so, a mailing will be a positive improvement of the lack of impactful community notification we currently have for Harb meetings. The reason for all of this, in my opinion, is that the more public participation we have in our meetings of the Harb, the better, for this participation informs our individual decisions on the board for the better. In sum, in my view, a mailing is a reasonable alternative to a lack of impactful and meaningful community notification that has existed before and which we are still using. Also, too, I just want to add that having, a paper, a page, whatever, mailed to you, so the next step would be the wording of that. It can also serve as a very basic educational tool because it would be mailed to neighbors in an approximate area of where a Harb case will be heard by us. And it's like, maybe people just don't know. And they say, oh, okay, I got something official here from the township. What is this Harb? Maybe that will help us too. But again, after considering alternatives and what we've discussed before, and after meeting with Kevin and discussions that we had with Sarah and Kevin and the things that we had already looked at and discussed in the board as far as types of notification, again, in my opinion, I think that the best way to go for that, at least right now, going forward into the intermediate future, would be through a mailing.
I do just want to add that Kevin was very gracious in discussing the pros and cons of all the options that we presented to him. And that mailing seems to be the most reasonable for all involved. Very little extra work for township personnel. Kevin has graciously offered to help us word whatever meeting announcement would need to go out. He has agreed to take that on as a responsibility. If there is any additional cost to the taxpayer, we could and probably will put something in the new ordinance to allow that to be borne by the applicant. So there would be almost no additional cost, a few minutes of staff time. There aren't that many houses to mail to, probably only 30 or 40. That's not a big mailing. It will take very little time for the staff, according to Kevin. And so that's what his choice is, also that for the very good reasons that Bob has presented, and also because Kevin prefers it. So that is likely how it's going to be put into the new ordinance. And I do want to assure my fellow Harb members that the costs will, whatever additional costs there are, will be borne by the applicant as per the new ordinance.
So how are we going to outline who receives notification within a neighborhood?
Well, the zoning, if there's a change in zoning requested, it has to do with number of feet away from the property. And I think that that's something that we'll have to consider, since we have to decide how far away from the property should people reasonably be allowed to comment. And that's something that we'll have to sit down with a map and a string, literally, and decide how far away is reasonable, because properties in the South Historical District have more land than in the North. And we have to have something that's going to be applicable to both.
And then I would assume that, that non-historic district residents would not receive them? Or would they, I mean, what if we're talking about someone who happens to be, right at the.
Are you
right at the
thinking of a
edge?
non-contributing member?
No, I'm thinking about outside of one of the 3 historic districts. So what happens if you happen to be, in whichever the last block within the historic district, if your neighbors happen to be just beyond the historic district, do they receive the notification as well?
Something that will have to be considered. Thank you, Miles.
I'm just delighted with the fact that we've got some consensus. You met with Kevin. We're going to have some kind of notification. I think it's just, no matter what that notification happened to be in what form, it's a step in the right direction. Nice work. All right.
I offer a motion to adjourn.
Well, we're close. Public participation? No? Okay. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I offer a motion to adjourn.
A second?
I second it.
All in favor? There we go.